Hey everyone, how's everyone doing today? Today we're doing an episode of Transformation Time. I love this show because as you start becoming more involved in real estate, you really start realizing that mindset and personal development is really what gets you to the next level. And so it's just an awesome thing because you get to, with our guest speakers, you get to learn their personal development journeys, the mindset shifts they've gone through to get to where they are. So it's an awesome topic that I always love. I love hearing people's stories because we can all relate to them, and you just start realizing it's really you need to change to get to where you need to be. So let's get started. And give me 1 minute. I'm just gonna add our guest speaker. Oh, so Sam, I see that your account, either you're on your computer, which you can't do on Instagram, you're gonna have to get on your phone, or you need to update your Instagram account. So if you want to just quickly get off, update or switch, just let me, just come on and I'll add you back in. While we wait for Sam to come on, just wanted like that to talk about personal development, the importance of it. Personal development is something that if you're not learning and changing and growing, your business, your whatever it is that you want to do in life, it won't happen. Like if you're trying to achieve a goal, achieving a goal is something that you haven't been able to do. And so what that means is you have to make changes in yourself to be able to achieve those goals. Unless if you're achieving something that you've already achieved, which, then you're not growing and improving. And especially when it comes to running businesses, you have to be ready to adapt and change. It's so important. Okay, let me see. 1 sec. I think we've got this. Perfect. Are we going live? I think we're going live. Yes, we are. Oh, and my head's cut off. Both of them cut off. Hey, Sam, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Sorry, this is my first time on Instagram Live. Still figuring out the technology here.
No worries, no worries. Thanks for coming on. It's always exciting to have people share their journeys because like that, like we all learn from everyone's journeys and it helps us, figure out how, if we can relate to certain people, it helps us to be able to go on our journey. So thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me. And that's a great point. I mean, it's useful to always hear different stages of the journey. I'm sure
Mhm.
you've got different guests with different points in their lives and different points in their businesses. And
Mhm.
I'm sure your
For
listeners
different,
are
with
probably
different personalities too, right?
exactly, exactly. So yeah, I'm
100%.
excited for this chat.
Awesome. So let's get started. Let's let the viewers just get to know a little bit about you. So just tell us, what do you do? What kind of real estate investor are you? Whatever you'd like to share.
Sure. So I'm a licensed architect. It's taken me about 9 years of practice in the field to get to where I am today. I have invested in real estate personally, but more recently I've co-founded a real estate development company with my business partners. We operate in Southern Ontario and outside of Ottawa and the Ottawa region as well. Right now we've got about 15 units under management. We've developed a few properties, cottage, 5-unit apartment, and custom home. But what I'm really excited about is this property we just got under contract. We're planning a 47-unit condo, mixed-use condo development in a town about half hour outside of Ottawa. We've got a prime location overlooking the river in this historic little main street. And yeah, we're really excited about this opportunity. Still in the early stages. We just entered our due diligence phase, but yeah, it's going to be great.
That's awesome. That's exciting. It's and especially because it's I believe you said your first one that you're doing owning yourself. So there's going to be tons of learning experience. Even I'm sure even as even though you're a licensed architect, but I think when you take it on yourself, it's going to be a completely new experience because you're going to probably see so many different areas that you probably don't see when you're doing it for other people.
Yeah, it takes on a whole new meaning. You know, we like to say in our industry that we take ownership of our clients' projects, really internalize that it's our projects we're designing. But the reality is, no, we're still contracted. We're not seeing the bottom line. We're not seeing any of the major returns that the developer sees. So now that I'm on the other side, it's more invigorating knowing that I have complete control of my design, but also I'm responsible for it, and the failure of the design means the failure of my business. So it's exciting. There's great upside, but there's also a bit more risk that I have to manage.
100%. And I think even also just you'll probably, I'm sure by the end of this, you'll probably have a much more different appreciation to your clients' projects and probably understand different dimensions from there. Probably it will, I think it'll even change the way you probably do your work, I would think, just because of like now with the experience, you kind of probably think differently or probably like worry about things that you wouldn't have before, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we architects, we create something that we like to feel proud of from an aesthetic standpoint. You know, we like to focus a lot on sustainable materials and processes. And a lot of our clients, they are concerned about other things, like their pro forma, like their schedule, like their investors. So this definitely helps me better understand my clients. And I think it also will help me figure out how to merge the design, the sustainability side with the returns as well. So yeah, you're absolutely right. This is a great experience from my profession, and I'm very happy to be involved in this.
That's awesome. So let's get started from the beginning. Like, what made you even decide, let's say, to become an architect? Like, did you have an influence from somewhere?
Not really, and it's I kind of stumbled into it. I'll go back to high school even, where I was obsessed with basketball. I don't know why. I gravitated towards it. My parents said when they put the ball in my hand, they could never take it out. And as a kid, my dream was to join the NBA and be a professional basketball player. Well, as end of grade 11 was rolling around, I realized, yeah, it probably was never going to happen. You know, there are certain things about myself I couldn't change. I couldn't change my height. I couldn't change how fast I could run or how high I could jump, no matter how much I trained. And I trained a lot, 6 days a week, often 2 to 4 hours a day on top of all my schoolwork. It was exhausting. And when I did some introspection and came to the realization that I just was never going to reach that next level, it was pretty shattering. I didn't know what to do with myself, as many people do graduating high school. So I knew I had some interests. I was artistically inclined. I'd won some art awards in high school, but I was also very practical and pragmatic. I enjoyed debates. I enjoyed learning about the law, that sort of thing. So I kind of had two options I was exploring. The first was to go and get my undergrad in a general arts, maybe philosophy, and then go to law school. And the second was to check out architecture, because I'd done some woodworking, I'd done some model building, I really enjoyed it. And I applied to the architecture program at Carleton University. It's the Israeli School of Architecture and Urbanism. It was a prestigious program, hard to get into. They only accepted 80 students out of, I think it was 12 to 1,500 applicants. You had to put together a portfolio of your work, sit down for interviews, and that process led me to believe that there might be something to it. And when I got in, I figured I'd give it a shot. Worst case, I can always go back and to do my general arts degree and or go into law school after. The program was grueling. We were pulling all-nighters every single week. We were constantly being pushed by our professors to grow and expand our designs. And I actually really enjoyed that. I think it created a real bond with the program, with my fellow students, and instilled a mindset of continual growth and application and hard work. So, long backstory there, but it's going somewhere, I promise. So I graduated with my undergrad degree, and again, I wasn't entirely sold on architecture as a profession because I hadn't really had any experience in it. So I went into the field, took a couple years between degrees, and worked for a few architecture firms, and realized that working in the field is completely different from what we were being taught in school. You know, with all the pretty designs we were coming up with, all the long hours and the creative environment did not really exist. And there was a huge gap in what my skills needed to be to contribute to an actual architecture firm. And my knowledge gap was immense. So there was a big learning curve and another kind of shakeup, you know. And then the fact that the industry, as starting right at the bottom, you're underpaid, overworked, it wasn't rewarding. But the work that I was doing, I really enjoyed. I thought was really interesting. So I was again kind of at a crossroads. Do I continue with this? How do I, turn this into the life that I want? And then I picked up the little purple book that so many people have read, changed so many lives, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kurasaki. Yeah, you guys know the one. And that was like a light bulb going off in my mind. You know, his philosophy, or the essence of the book, is essentially that there are two mindsets. There's the go to school, get a good job, go in and get employment, and then after 65 years of saving, maybe you'll retire. And then there's the other mindset, which is the entrepreneur's mindset. Start a business, take control of your finances, take your business income and your profits, invest that into real estate, and grow exponentially. And that resonated with me profoundly. So the minute I finished reading that book, I started going to the library, going to bookstores, picking up as many different books on investing as I could. And I made another realization. The profession of architecture is real estate. They go hand in hand. We design buildings. We take clients through the entitlement process. We create from the ground up. We create value. And as architects, we see the fees, but we don't see the end value. So my plan that I started to set in motion was to get my license and then start developing real estate under my name and my business, which now has morphed into my partners and our business, which I'm very privileged to be working with 3 other great individuals who you've met recently, and yeah, the plan is taking hold, but it's a long and slow process. There's always learning curves. There's always shifts and challenges you have to overcome, and that requires a lot of introspection and a lot of understanding that you don't know what you don't know, and you have to 100%. Go out and find out what you don't know.
100%. And and like that Robert Kiyosaki's book, I think everyone has read it, and it does that shift of, oh my God, I need to figure out how to do this and switch, like you said, to that other mindset. So once you read that, did you probably after that is when you probably bought your first property, like a rental property or some type of property?
Yeah, it took me a while.
And how was that experience? Was it scary, or like how did that go for you?
It was terrifying. The first house I bought is the house I'm still living in today. It is a 160-year-old 1.5-story house right next to a set of train tracks. And I was terrified buying something next to the train tracks. But I did my due diligence. I drove to the house like 3 or 4 times a week, sat there while the train went by. I talked to the neighbors. You know, I did my walkthroughs. As an architect, I understand construction, and I can spot deficiencies or issues with the structure. And the house was in great shape. You know, it was a little worn. You know, we needed to do renovations, and the train ended up not being an issue at all. It's mainly the Via and Go line that goes by our house. It doesn't go very fast. It's not very frequent, and there's a minimal amount of noise. So by the time we were ready to close, we were confident that it was going to be just fine for our purposes. So I went almost immediately into renovating the place, and then the market just went up and up and up. It skyrocketed, which was great timing for us, because then I refinanced, bought a couple other properties, and kind of did the same thing. You know, you fix them up, you rent it, and you extract the value as the appreciation keeps going. Comes a point though when you always max out on your single family. You know, lenders say you've reached your debt coverage ratio, we can't lend you anymore, and it's a slower game. So that when you hit that ceiling, that's when it's time to explore the world of syndication. And for your listeners who don't know what syndication is, it's just a fancy word for saying working together. You know, working together to be able to afford something bigger, working together to be able to leverage, to get higher leverage and better yield. So that's where development comes in, because there are different stages to this real estate game. You tend to start with single family, then you move to small multifamily, fiveplex, duplex, fourplex, fiveplex. Then you start to grow 10, 15 units. And each growth requires slightly different skill sets, slightly different strategies, and the more units you kind of pursue, the more investors you need to get behind you, and the more of a track record that becomes more important to lenders. So for
100%. And so what kind of changes did you see in your, like, did you see having to do for yourself to be able to accomplish the goals that you wanted to achieve?
What sort of changes? It was more accumulating knowledge. You know, I was training as an architect, so my knowledge around the building construction side, working with cities and municipalities, and the approval side was going on in my daily job. What I needed to learn is the financial side, the procurement of land side, and then how we bring on investors and other people, use other people's money. That was what I would do in my spare time. And it became, you know, critical for us to be able to merge the two now that we're going into a much larger vertical. Yeah, I don't think there was a huge shift for me, because that was part of my plan. But the major change came when I met my business partner, Michael Davidson, and he introduced me to his coach, Victor Minash. Victor is a big-time real estate developer. You know, he's pretty humble about it, but he's very knowledgeable, very experienced. They have, I think, 700 units under construction right now, as well as I think they've got a 1,700-acre property they're rezoning, and I think a few hundred more acres in their pipeline as well. So that's where the real change happened, because all the learning you do from these books, it'll only get you so far. Where you really want to accelerate your growth, you need to find the right environment. So the people who are doing what you want to do, and the people who have done what you want to do, and learn from them. And they're always willing to share their knowledge. You know, this is a collaborative field. We can't do it ourselves. We need architects, engineers, we need investors, lenders, brokers, contractors, we need everyone working together towards a common goal. And the way we give back is to pass that knowledge down to the next person who's interested, who's trying to do what you do.
100%, yeah. And is that, would you say that you, because I noticed, for example, with me, when I was young, my parents would always say, like, you got to do things alone, starting a business, like, you can't trust anyone. And it was very conflicting for me because I'm very much like a team player kind of person. But then when I started to get into certain real estate communities, like you said, you start seeing that. Did you have those kind of like conflicts where you had one way of thinking and and then realize that, oh, that's not the reality, and you can, for example, like collaborate together, or in other areas that you had a shift happen?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a common misconception that as an architect, you have to hold your contractors and your consultants' feet to the fire. You've got to tell them, yeah, I want this, but I want you to cut the price in half. You need to deliver this in half the time you promised. That's unrealistic, and frankly, it's not the right way to do business. We're all trying to do the best job we can, squeeze out our own little share of profit from every job. It's far more effective to work with people as opposed to trying to dominate people. I learned this pretty quickly, going to site as an intern and talking with contractors. And they take pride in their work for the most part. Yeah, you get some bad contractors who, for one reason or another, they try and cheat you out of maybe some materials or mark up their quotes unrealistically. And as the professional, you have to keep an eye out for that. And it's your responsibility to utilize your knowledge and experience to look out for that. But ultimately, people are just trying to do the best they can. That's my belief anyway. And I find it's been generally true. So that's what the approach I bring to my work and to my business as well. And I know it can be tough, especially if you've been burned in the past, to develop trust. But you can be optimistic. You can be assume that there's good in everyone, but not be stupid about it either. You still need to do your due diligence. You still need to do your background checks. You still need to call references. You still need to dig into people and their past projects so that you can be comfortable that the person you're dealing with and the relationship you're forming is legitimate and genuine. And then, that's going to be a long-lasting and profitable relationship for you.
100% agree, and that's a very great point that you've said, actually, and I just want to reiterate it because it's kind of like saying the other way around, right? If you're lazy and picking someone else, most likely the person you're picking is someone who's lazy and doesn't care about your project. So it's like if you're taking the time to find the right people and look into them, you will find, like you said, those ones that are actually good at what they do and, take pride in what they do. Because it's true, I notice the people who don't, for example, like even something simple, like don't even check the reviews, which is like a very quick way. That's like one of the quickest ways. You check the review and if it's bad, like don't even consider it. Go on to the next one. And you just hear people complain about contractors and then they say the name and then I'm just like, that guy has 2 stars. I'm like, what were you expecting?
Exactly. It's really not hard to get the truth by doing a quick internet search. It can be more challenging with larger projects because you tend to deal with larger construction companies, and they have a host of project managers and general contractors, and some they work out well, some they don't. But you need to find the person in the organization who is really good at their job, and that's the person you deal with. Sometimes it means going over someone's head, but for a large project that has millions of dollars on the line, that's something you're going to want to do. For a smaller project, if you're doing your own renovations, then you need to call up their past clients. And you can usually find out who those clients are without asking directly for a reference, because chances are they'll just give you someone who they know is going to speak highly of them. But if you call around, look up some of their projects and track down the owner's information and call them up directly, that's a great way to find an answer, to get a more truthful understanding of how the contractor works.
Yeah, again, another great point. Because it's like once you've done your due diligence, just talking to them is so important to get to know them. Because like you said, if they're a person, you know, you're going to be dealing with a lot, like the project manager, the GC, and you know you're communicating a lot with them. Even just something between personalities, right? Making sure like your personality matches with their personality, because that sometimes it's just that, or like the communication, making sure that the way you communicate, they understand, and vice versa. Like there's so many things that usually are mainly the problems that come up, and you know, like that, like end up blaming someone else for, but really it's like maybe the compatibility, oh my God, I can't even say the word compatibility was there. I can't seem to speak today. So that's like another great point, because sometimes people like that, investors a lot, will always blame the other people. And I think it's very important to actually understand what really did happen. And was it, because normally it's always two sides, right? Something's gone, yes, wrong on their side, but something went wrong on our side too to make the full thing happen, right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah, very great points.
taking responsibility as the sponsor for deals is like the buck's supposed to stop at us. If something went wrong, likely it was something we did wrong. You know, we're not going to blame the contractor because he built something when our drawings were unclear about what should be built. A lot of clients do, because you know it's a lot easier to blame someone else than to try and assume you're responsible and make changes internally. But it's fundamental to growth, to growing and being better, is by constantly reviewing your own systems, your own processes. And when a mistake happens, you trace it back to its source and say, well, how could I have avoided this, and how can I avoid it in the future?
100%, completely agree. And I think same thing with you, same thing that happens with you that happens with me and my husband, is that because you kind of get to see both sides, because you're an architect, so you see like how your clients react, and now like that, you being a client and seeing that end, you will probably start noticing, you'll probably have sympathy for both sides, right? Because that's something that I've noticed that's happened in myself, is that, you know, people will tell me things, and then you know, and then I hear my husband working on his projects and he tells me things, and you just can understand like, wow, that was like a full-on communication issue, or you know, that was more, you know, the contractor's fault, or that was more the investor's fault. Like you start really understanding that it's usually, to be honest, it's just a communication issue or laziness, like that. You don't do your due diligence and you found the wrong person for the job that you wanted to get done.
Absolutely. And funny thing about our profession as architects on the job site, we are employed by the client, but according to the Architects Act and the Construction Act, we're actually supposed to remain an impartial mediator between the client and the contractor. So if a dispute comes up, we're supposed to be able to look at the dispute from an impartial lens and be able to mediate and figure out a solution before it goes to arbitration or to court. So that's a level of responsibility that is kind of difficult. It is difficult because we know where our bread and butter is coming from. The client's the one that's paying us. But we sometimes have to piss them off and say, look, there was a mistake. The contractor did what he was told. Unfortunately, you're going to have to pony up the money to fix the mistake. And some people don't like to hear it, but that's the reality of the situation, and that's the reality of any team. You know, you're never going to. It's never going to be smooth sailing. You're always dealing with different personalities, different perspectives, different viewpoints, and different motivations. And the key to running a good team is keeping everyone focused on the end goal. and communicating effectively so that everyone is working to their best of their abilities towards that end goal.
100%. And like again, that you were saying, even I didn't know that actually. That's very interesting about architects, but like that, like, and something that we're not really taught, I would say, in school is that the importance of communication, right? The importance of how to effectively communicate things and solve problems and kind of keep things amicable while the projects are going on, and just making sure that everyone is understanding it. For me, I feel like, what do you think that it's something that you learn a lot, like once you get into the real world, the importance of communication, which we were never really taught in school.
The funny thing is they try to do that in school. That's what all the group projects are for. But you usually get one person who takes over the project and just does most of the work themselves. You get a couple people who are trying to contribute because they want to, but this one person is a little less flexible, so it's kind of a mishmash of work. And then of course you get that one person who lets everyone else do the work. They go off and hang out with their friends, and then at the end of the project they'll take their A-, thank you very much.
Exactly.
Thankfully, I haven't seen it happen too much in my industry, because there's a paycheck on the line. And the consequences of people not contributing are felt. You can tell if your consultant has not done their work. When you sit down to review their drawings, it's going to look very different from all the other consultants' drawings and specs. So you can call them out on that. And there are times where our consultants just get slammed, especially over the pandemic. All the M&E consultants are working on putting in designing new ventilations for all the schools. So a lot of our projects got held up because their priority was to the federal and provincial governments, and rightly so. I mean, they have the power and the money and their repeat contracts. But then we had to tell our clients, I'm sorry, our projects are delayed because our M&E consultant is slammed right now, but we're going to keep pushing them to get us a deliverable. I may have gotten off track there, but it kind of illustrates, teamwork always has its bumps, but I find that the people we tend to work with are ones who really enjoy performing, and they take pride in ownership of their work.
Yeah, and just learning how to deal with what you're basically saying, like deal with different situations or different personalities, and just being able to work together and resolve the issues. So now with your big goals of this development project, what kind of changes are you seeing in yourself that you're going to have to do for your future goals?
I'm going to have to get more comfortable doing interviews like this. I've got.
And how's it going? Feeling good?
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, I plan to take some public speaking courses to really maximize my skill set and work on it, because practice it's what will solidify your skills. And I speak with clients on a daily basis. I present designs and ideas, but speaking to investors is different, because you have an added level of responsibility that you're handling someone's livelihood, and we have to be able to convey to potential investors that our project, we've done the absolute most due diligence on it, that our design is going to be well received by the town council or the municipality, and that the projections we're putting forward have been scrutinized and are conservative enough that the deal still works, but there leaves a ton of upside. But in the case something does go wrong, it's not going to severely impact our investors, and that they're comfortable putting their money with us in order to get this project completed. So that's something that's relatively new for me that I'm going to have to learn to do effectively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's going to be definitely, and I felt like just even building your team, that must have been a learning experience for you to figure out like that, like finding the right people to make that good team that you guys know that you could really become successful in your
Absolutely.
projects.
Yeah, definitely. And I've got an interesting story about myself and my business partner, Michael. So we met about 2 years ago through a friend of mine, and he brought me into his coaching, and we analyzed, I want to say, like 50 different deals together. And then we got to a point where we were going to make it official, start our company, Biosis. And it came time to start negotiating, okay, how do we structure this? How do we split it? And I had been going through a lot of turmoil, being I have a 1 year old daughter, and I've been putting in a ton of hours trying to develop the structures and systems behind the business. And I was just exhausted. And I ran when we were about to make that joint. I ran into I quit. I felt like I didn't have the level of trust that I needed to move forward. And at that point, we decided, okay, let's just have a face to face. Let's talk this through and let's figure it out. And after we did our company retreat, all my problems, all my fears kind of went away, evaporated, because I could clearly tell that he was a great compliment to me. He knew his stuff. He was committed. He was going to do what he does best, and I was allowed and would allow me to do what I do best. And this was going to be a great partnership. But it took that face to face. It took that bit of conflict going back and forth um, for us both to feel comfortable that this marriage, which is what a business partnership is, it's like a marriage, is going to be successful going forward. And we brought in Dakota and Graham as partners, and that company retreat it was just such a great event to get to know each other and how we were going to work together. And since then, I think it's gone really smoothly. We all have our roles and responsibilities, and we're all executing to the highest of our ability right now. Now that can change. You throw a wrench into the system, and you've got to put on the brakes, get the wrench out, and make some adjustments. And we might end up having to do another face to face to try and figure that out and hash it out. But I believe we're so well matched that it's going to be fairly easy for us to do that.
Hmm. And like that, I mean, in any project, there's always going to be conflicts and things that happen, especially once the stressful moments really come. It's when, you really start having to put that energy into each other to be like, it's stressful, but we need to stick together, work together, and just make sure that things happen and that we can actually continue even with the conflicts.
Yeah, and that communication is essential to any marriage or to any partnership. You just talking it out, that will solve 90% of your problems, and the other 10%, you'll work together to figure it out.
100% agree. Because usually, like that, usually it's you're keeping things inside, and then it's like, and I think, like you said, even in a marriage, right? You keep things inside, let it grudge, and then all of
Mhm.
a sudden you finally decide to talk about it. It gets resolved so easily. You're like, why did I even stress about this?
Yeah. My wife and I, we've been together over 10 years now, and our fights never last longer than a day because as soon as we look at each other, we'll start yelling and saying, "You made me feel like this, you didn't do this." But then we are like, "Oh, well, that's why you were mad." Okay, well,
Yeah.
I'll try and work on that, or, I'll do the dishes, before we go to bed, that sort of thing. You don't like doing the dishes, I'll do the dishes. You feed my daughter while I'm doing the cleanup. We'll figure it out. That's
Mm-hmm.
how a good marriage should work.
100%. Yeah. And like that, usually it's like the littlest, silliest things that we've just allowed to build up. And then like that, you said like, oh, this is the issue. Easily, okay, we can solve this. And so what would you say now? Um, what are your big goals? And your big, like, personal or business? What are your big goals? Oh, I think we are frozen. Is that me? Or I hope it's not me. Can you guys hear me? I'm not sure who is frozen. Did you? Oh, hey, we're back. I don't know if you got to hear my question.
I did not get to hear your
Okay.
question.
I was just saying, what is your big goal? I mean, like besides, like I know you have your development project, but what's that big goal, like personal and in the business side that you want to achieve? And what are those steps that you want to take to achieve them?
Uh, so my ultimate goal, as an entrepreneur, real estate developer, a husband and a father and a citizen is just to deliver as much value as I can in the time that I have. Uh, so we have a big, hairy, audacious goal for our business. We want to be a big time player in the industry, but from a personal standpoint, I firmly believe that life is what we make of it. If you want to sit on your couch all day playing video games, then that's what you're going to do, and maybe that's your meeting, maybe that's what brings you happiness. For me, it's trying to maximize my time on the planet, knowing that it's finite, and see just how far I can get. So I know, like my partner Michael, he's very much into numbers, setting his goals. He's a triathlete and he's training for the Ironman. So every day he's trying to track how far he runs. For me, it's more. I have a goal, a professional vision, but I just kind of want to see how far I can go.
Mm-hmm.
It's maybe a little less structured of an approach, but however far I get, as long as I've given it my all, I'm going to be happy.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of exciting, right? Because I'm assuming that what you thought you would be probably in high school. Did you think that you would be, this is where you were, like, or even like younger, 10, 7 years old, and like looking back to now where you are, did you actually think you were, this is who you would be?
I thought I was going to be playing with the Toronto Raptors at this point. I'm pushing 32 now. I would be close to the end of my NBA career. But life doesn't care about your beliefs. It's what you end up making of it. As I said before, I ran into the realization I wasn't going to be an NBA player, and it took me a while to figure out what it was I wanted to do. But now that I'm here, I'm loving every minute of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. And so it's really, yeah, I find it very funny when you look back and you think of, because for me, for example, I never thought that I would be, let's say, a full-time real estate investor. That was never in my thoughts. I thought I would be in corporate world probably for the rest of my life. So it's funny to look back and just, or even actually what you were saying. It's funny that you said, and actually now I want to know your thoughts of it, because I was kind of the same. I was like a heavy core athlete, and I was like, I want to go to the Olympics. I want to become a professional. But for me, it was more my family was just like, no, education is more important. This is just like a side, have fun type of thing. And I would say, like, I almost went into like a depression type of thing. Like, I went into university, I'm like, man, no
Mhm.
sports. Like, did you kind of go through like a depressive type of mode when you had that realization? Because for example, for me, like I was like eating healthy, like no drinking, like everything was like I need to be my 100%. And then once university came and I knew I didn't need to be healthy, that like went out the window.
Yeah, exact same story. I had my first alcoholic beverage, after my high school prom.
Mm-hmm.
I never went to parties. I didn't touch any kind of substances. I ate clean. I just trained constantly. And I think my parents, like I kept up with schooling. I applied the same mentality for my basketball training to my schooling. In fact, as when I was in elementary school, I was a average student, but as soon as I picked up a basketball, my grades shot up at the same time because it's the value in athletics. It's not like it's you don't recognize the value right away. What it does is it's training a mindset. It's training you how to work together as a team. It's training you how to apply yourself. It's training you how to train. And a lot of people, they don't know how to train and how to practice because they didn't go through that kind of system as a kid. And when you enter a very difficult kind of university program, a lot of people will have mental health issues and might have to take a semester off or something because they weren't prepared for it. That's why I think athletics is so valuable from a young age. Athletics, learning an instrument, and even that's how you mold and create the neuron, the pathways in your mind to be able to handle the grueling reality of real life and professional work.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Like one of the things, like exactly that you said that I didn't realize sports helped me was, for example, I remember in university, my focus was like intense, so intense when I was doing work that my friends would tell me because like nothing, like it's like I had blinders on. If I was like solving a problem, blinders on, figuring it out until it got solved. Whereas like other people would give up quicker and I'd be like, no, it's happening. I'm figuring it out. So I felt like focus was one big thing that I didn't realize that sports brought to my lifestyle of like that schooling, making it made focusing for me was super easy, I have to say. But it was because I got, like you said, you're trained from young that you have to go, go, go. And like you're focusing. And like when you're in that competitive level, like you said, where you're training like 6 times a week, you have to, like your mind is always like, when you're there and you're always improving. And like delayed gratification, I think is also a really good one. You know, you're always training to get to that goal that will happen in like competitions or wherever it is. And so, any other ones that you think or would like to add on?
Yeah, so it's the idea of mastery. You know, mastering anything, it doesn't mean you're achieving a status. Mastery is a process of constantly trying to better yourself. And learning how to pursue constant self-development and to keep that as part of your daily life is I think a key to success and also certainly a key to my happiness. You know, if I feel like I'm stagnating, if I'm not learning every day, well, then I get bored or my mood gets affected and so for me I get my energy by constantly trying to push the bar forward. That's why I love building a business and this industry that we're in because you can constantly be learning. It never stops, and you see the fruits of your labor the harder you work and the further you go.
100%. It's like a little button you push inside yourself, right? Like, what can I make myself do now?
Exactly. And that's what Michael's doing with his Ironman training. You know, he's figuring out what his physical limits are and it's how he mentally prepares himself for a 30-kilometer run. It's fascinating to hear him talk about it. He has a book that he came out with that describes a lot of his research around this. It's called The Waking. I suggest your listeners go and look it up on Amazon. But I have a slightly different approach to it that's not quite as structured, but I'm also constantly trying to see how do I move that bar? How do I make myself better? How do I become better at what I am passionate about?
Awesome. Thanks for coming on. It was so much fun to hear about your journey and hear about your learning experiences.
Thank you very much for having me. This was a wonderful experience, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity.
Awesome. So if you guys liked what you heard from Sam, you're going to want to follow him and see all the progress, especially this development project. I'm excited to see what's going to happen from it. It's going to be super interesting to follow your journey. Thanks so much for coming
Absolutely.
on.
Thanks, you.
Bye, everyone. We'll see you in the next episode.